Hey guys, it's Sunday and I've just put some videos together from earlier today where I made some suggestions on how to make the long star for the kids. Anyway, here's the video. Hope you enjoy. Email me or comment below if you have any questions. Okay, so what we're going to do is a really good idea is to measure your tigers. Look at the camera, guys. Measure your tigers first. And what we really want to do is you want to be about sort of 10 to 15 centimeters longer than they are tall. So your length is 135, so I'm going to make it 1.5 meters for her. And Kintia is about 128, so I'll make it 1450 for her, 1.45. Thank you, ladies. The supplies that you're going to need for making a sword. You're going to need one rusty saw. This happened to get left out in the rain. Silly me. A pair of scissors. Now I've got here some 80 grit, 120 grit, 240 grit, and 400 grit sandpaper, and they get progressively finer. And so you're going to start with the 80 grit first, obviously, for those who've never used sandpaper before. And now something else I also got from Bunnings was some stain, and they've got these little tiny bottles for about $10. You can get different colored ones. The girls picked this one that's a cedar red. You can get black, you can get all kinds of different ones. If you want it to, if you get the gray one, if you want it to be a different color, like green or pink or blue, just add some food dye to it, not too much, like a couple of drops, and just test it at the bottom of the stick. So what we've got here is the sticks you can buy at Bunnings for about $20. And if the kids are over 180 centimeters, which is unlikely, you have to go all the way up to 2.4. And what we've got here, we've got different ones here. This is an oak. Now this is an inch thick. This is for an adult. For the kids here, what I've gone with is a 20 mil. And so I picked two different ones here. I've got a white oak and a Tasmanian oak, just so they have slightly different colors for the kids. But you can see here, you're gonna have an additional length here. And so it's pretty simple. All we're going to do is mark out these with the scissors where I'm going to cut. I'm going to cut them with the rusty saw, and then we'll sandpaper. So what I've done is I've prepped these the sandpaper, and I've cut them into smooth round, into long pieces like this. And a really good trick I found over the years of making stuff out of timber, especially if you've got a round implement, is to make it long like this here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use it this way, wrapping it around that way, so you're a little bit more control over it. Now, if your kids are doing this, please tell them not to squeeze too hard. The intent is that what you're going to do is you're going to start with the 80 grit, and you really want to get rid of, you can see, if I get up close enough, you can see there's like all kinds of bumps and things like that. So with the 80 grit, what we're going to do is we're going to try and make it smooth. You're also going to use it for rounding the edges here. It's really important that we round the edges here. All right, now once you've gotten rid of all these bumps and grates and things like that, any divots and stuff that are in there, and you go through, you can feel it as you go. But you're going to move on to the progressively more finer and finer and finer, and obviously it's going to get easier. It is a messy job, so I suggest that they do this outside. You won't want to do this inside here. Alrighty, so I'm going to just crack on with this. When I finish with the 80, I'll do a bit of a zoom in and then show you, and then we'll go from there. Alright, cool. So we've finished up with the 80 grit. Now one of the things I did when I was cutting, and you can see here, it broke a bit off the timber. If I turn around and grab the broken bit, I've broken it off already. Here, like you have a little bit of timber that breaks off at the end like that. Don't worry too much, it doesn't have to be perfect. I know there's some kids out there with some OCD that will really, really not be happy about a bad cut, but just sand it off. You can see here I've rounded, come on camera, I've rounded the edge off. Like with the 80 grit, you're still gonna have like overall pieces and things like that. The one that's gonna do the work is actually gonna be the next one, the 120, but this really took off all of the spurs and edges and things like that. So I'm actually making two today. So I've already done these two as well. So we're just going to move on to the 120, and it's going to be pretty boring. Fantastic. Okay, so I've finished up here with the 120, and you can see here now it's starting to get smooth. The good check is always to, run your hands up and down it. You can feel that, that it's smooth and things like that. Really making sure that you're rounding off the edges here, because you don't want anything sharp around here. All right, so I'm going to do the 200 and the 400. I won't stop in between that, but you can see that it's just getting progressively smoother as you do it. If you do come across any areas, like this one's an example here, where there was a bit of a chunk out of it, just really focus on that and just smoothing it out. It doesn't really matter too much. They don't have to be perfect. I gotta keep saying that with the kids. They don't have to be perfect. So just sort of focus on getting those areas a bit smoother. And then if you know, the whole point is that you won't feel any splinters if you're making sure that you're taking care of it. Fantastic. Okay, so we're here now. What I've done is I've taken a Sharpie permanent marker. Look, and I've written the girls' initials onto theirs. You can scratch it in if you want to. Just make sure you sand it. There's no rough bits there. I'm using a stain that this will be able to be seen through the stain. Next step, what you're going to do is you're going to take a wet cloth, just an old t-shirt that I've cut up, and we're going to give them a wipe down. And then it's really important we're going to let them dry before we stain them. And you'll see why, because otherwise the stain won't stick. Anyway, that's the next tip. So we're just going to give them a wipe down and let them dry for 10-15 minutes. All right, so now that they've dried out, one of the things that you'll probably find is it's actually a little bit rough to touch. And that's just because when we were sanding it, we weren't cleaning it in between each time. So what I suggest that you do, if it is rough to touch, is get a hold of your 240 again and go over that, and then give it a clean. And then when you finish with that, go over it with the 400 again. And then that'll make it smoother. And then clean it out and then let it dry. Okay, so I've got, for this one, I've got Cedar 50ml. This is the waterproof traditional spirit-based stain. This stuff here is really, really, really toxic stuff. Oh, look at that. There's a seal on it that I've forgotten to take off. You can usually just push your finger through it. It will stain your skin. I can tell you that now. When you're using it, like, you'll see that it's actually really, really easy to get it out when you get going and start staining. Just be mindful of how much stain. You actually don't need that much. You can see I've only put like a dollop on there, and it's really going to spread out there. So, and just obviously don't stain this anywhere where you don't want it to stain something else. Cool, thanks man. Awesome, so the girls have got their staffs now. You can see that the slightly different heights have got slightly different sticks there. And how they feel, girls?
Good. Awesome.
Yeah, no splinters?
They feel really soft. Like most of that, like at the top it could hurt you, so don't do that. But
yeah.
It's really, really soft and they could get...
And they're not too thick for your hands there?
No, they're really good.
No stabbing, thank you, Kintia. No, okay, I'm going to stop the video. Alright, thanks guys, that's how to make the staffs.